Started. Good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday. I'm the Gray Strega, and I'm here to give you your daily collective read for today, Thursday, May 23rd, 2024. What do we have coming through in the cards for today? May I please have the first 5 cards in our 5-card spread? First card we are starting our day off with today is our 10 of Wands, and they are in their upright. Did you hear what I mentioned about the fact that Taurus season that we just came out of was all about building momentum? A lot of the clarity of understanding that was reached during the Scorpio full moon. We saw that a lot of this Taurus season that we just came out of was building upon that sense of determination, and it's been slow going. It's been heavy path work, but that heaviness, that sense of building momentum, is almost that moment that has been reaffirming and reasserting a lot of the conviction that is driving things forward right now. And that is having a different impact depending on where you are on the frequencies. I'll point out that a lot of the work for energy deep in the heart of the divine union frequency right now, this isn't even necessarily a moment where you're seeing something that feels like it's shifting or changing your own path work in terms of unpacking or going into introspection on situations and circumstances that you experienced or you were holding wounds, doubts, insecurities of from the deep past. A lot of the energy that was doing that work was doing so not necessarily to change course, but to reestablish and reaffirm their commitment to their own healing journey. Certain parts, certain portions of ourself, we can only confront when we feel that stability, when we feel that sense of energetic protection. And that is why we see that while a lot of that energy right now isn't doing that work for the sake of the counterpart, but having the energy of healed counterpart by your side as you go into those moments of introspection, that is what is amplifying one's own commitment moving forward at this time, particularly because one of the major factors that we identified that felt like that similarity between the feminine energy doing some of that deeper long-term healing and the masculine was the recognition point in how some of those wounds were effectively being created by energy that wasn't taking that same level of introspection, that same level of conscientiousness. For masculine energy, if these were moments that you were taking that sense of accountability to something that happened to you, that ability to recognize and see that some of that energy may have been the result of feminine that wasn't in a healed space, that was amplifying their own hurt onto others. That is the conviction and commitment of the masculine to cultivate and create a space that is creating a sense of energetic healing for the feminine, because that's almost the way that the masculine energy feels like they're going back to protect their own inner child, by resolving and saying to oneself, something that energetically occurred to me will not happen again because I will be the vector of change. While for feminine energy, that same sense of recognition, that ability of seeing something from the past that you held yourself overly accountable for, that you created that moment that you were looking outside of oneself in relationality to navigating and holding oneself accountable to an energetic standard. This is also the sense of the feminine in that modality saying, I am going to reaffirm my own connection to myself, because by reaffirming my own connection to myself, I heal the energy around me. Because I also recognize that when I hold myself to a higher standard, I also hold the masculine energy to the higher standard, thereby facilitating that same sense of healing. So we see even now, that doesn't necessarily feel like the type of healing that makes something stop hurting, right? But it does create that sense of hurting in such a way that it amplifies one's conviction and commitment not to allow something that you experience to propagate if you don't feel like it was coming from a place of healing. And that's only the type of work that we can do when we're ready to confront those parts of ourselves that we weren't necessarily ready to prior to the moment of being more energetically healed. Now, for masculine and feminine energy coming into the divine union frequency right now, this isn't necessarily feeling like something that is happening on an internal metaphysical level. This is something that's potentially happening in a very tangible way, especially because we see that a lot of the energy coming into divine union right now is reinforcing and building deeper connections, particularly since that Scorpio full moon that we experienced last month. If these were spaces and places wherein one saw other parts of the counterpart, seeing those hidden parts of the self, those insecurities and those fears, do we see the healed energy coming into that space of taking another person's wounds personally? No, we see that ability to hold something with compassion, but also to hold it in a way that you create space for it, but you are mindful as to how another desires it to be held. That is what has been difficult for a lot of the energy coming into divine union, but it's building that deeper connection. It's building that prioritization. It's really becoming the tie that binds. And that is why we see, if there's any feeling of discomfort right now, for a lot of that energy coming into the divine union frequency, it is being motivating and it is amplifying activation and activity, because that's that moment where something that might have felt completely comfortable and normal in one's day-to-day experience when you are in separation is now becoming more untenable, not because anything has actually changed around you, but because your direction has changed. And the direction that we see that is changing right now is the manifestation goal that is being created by the energy coming into divine union, making that something from nothing, which is the shared dream and aspiration of the energies of the counterparts that are moving deeper into the heart of the divine union. And that is where we see a lot of that planning and path work is now being put into practice. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, that is in separation, we saw here a lot of energy over the last month. Things were opening up, new possibilities were being explored, and something now looks like it might be walked away from just as quickly. Now, why is that? Because this is energy that is healed. This is energy that is healed. And one of the things that we see that the energy that is healed and working on healing is doing right now is amplifying the desire or need not to put off doing something difficult, but doing the difficult thing first, even if it is hard, because that is the affirmation of recognizing that if something is difficult now, at the time of making new energetic connections, it's not going to get easier with time. In fact, it might make it harder. And that has a lot to do with that sense of trying to recognize if these are new energetic connections, if they're halfway healed, if these are energies that have been building bridges by discussing and having that perception on the past and feeling that sense of mutual accountability and lessons being taken from the past, whether there's an ability to talk about what one desires and aspires for the future, which would be indicative as to the sense of being ready to move away from something, move forward, to build closure by articulating what that long-term manifestation goal is, as opposed to recognizing an energy that may still be too caught on the past, even in a point of being able to assess and analyze it, but not being able to experience something other than that. Second card in our 5-card spread for today is one card to clarify, please. Clarification coming through right now with our hangman, and it is in its reversal. So what are we identifying right now? As I mentioned, this is difficult. This is energy that is pushing their own envelope in this way, because as I mentioned, and it is having a different impact on feminine and masculine energy, bearing in mind this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to. For the feminine energy doing this type of work, this feels very much like an open palm, if you will. Like that's that moment that the feminine recognizes, even if they're building an energetic connection with someone, that they have to be willing and ready to relinquish it if they don't see that ability to move away from something that is indicated by the ability to articulate upon what the manifestation goals are going forward. I will stress that for a lot of the feminine energy in this modality right now, this is not necessarily seeking immediate commitment from the new connections that they're making with masculine, bearing in mind this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to. But rather, this is the feminine energy that is looking towards masculine energy to see if they have a commitment towards walking away from something entirely that would be articulated upon by being able to speak about what their hopes, dreams, and aspirations for the future are, amplified by the connections that they've been making and articulating upon the past experiences. So we see even now that is really difficult for the feminine, because that's the feminine that's almost trying to reaffirm the masculine and say, make no mistake, don't misunderstand me. There's that desire to want to move forward with someone. But there's that sense of recognizing that one can't do that by oneself. That's the energy of the feminine saying, I want to see that you have that ability and capacity to talk towards things, that you're ready to let something go by amplifying and articulating what it is that you want. Because this is also feminine energy that is almost saying to masculine in separation, while I appreciate building an energetic connection with you, there's that need or desire to say, I don't want you to identify this as a manifestation wherein we are just creating company for one another as we heal. Right? Feminine even recognizes that there's some of the masculine energy that's in that point of healing that could be indicative in someone who is halfway healed, that is amplified by an inability to talk about what the manifestation goals are because someone is looking for what could be best identified as energetic company. So we see even now that that's the feminine energy that is holding on to the lessons of the past, that is being amplified by looking towards masculine, that feels like they've come into a space of healing, that not only can they look towards the past to understand the lessons that they need to take from it, but they're ready to apply those lessons by being able to speak upon what those hopes, what those dreams, what those aspirations are going forward. And they don't need to feel like they're being facilitated specifically by the connection of the feminine, but the feminine just wants to see that that ability is there and present. While for masculine energy, you may be recognizing this right now with a lot of the feminine energy, especially if you're building new connections with them. You may even be recognizing that same need and desire to want to express it, but it is very hard for masculine energy, because to be able to come into that modality of being able to express what one's manifestation goals are immediately understands that that creates the vector of someone being able to identify whether they share those same manifestation goals. And masculine working through the vulnerability that is required to be able to articulate and amplify in that way, it feels a little, I want to say, it feels a little anxiety inducing. It feels a little energetically difficult. It creates that fear in the masculine about whether the feminine will aspire and desire for same. But what is the healed masculine energy doing right now to help build their own courage and conviction in being able to do this? This is the masculine recognizing that you're working on healing your own energetic cycles. So if this is masculine energy that is learning the lesson of not wanting to build a world of illusion around the feminine, because when we build a world of illusion around the feminine, the only person we build a world of illusion around is ourselves. This is the masculine energy that wants to free themselves of this energetic burden, but you realize that at the same time of doing so, you may be feeling that sense of navigating through those feelings of anxiety in relationality to the rejection that you may be fearing, that you may be experiencing from a feminine as it relates to articulating your own dreams and desires. But again, what is the masculine energy doing right now to reaffirm their own commitment to this path work? Remembering and identifying that if you were to reveal your own manifestation goals to a feminine, and that moves the feminine energy away from you, then that isn't an act of rejection. That's recognizing that that isn't a place or space of alignment. So even now, we are seeing that for a lot of the masculine energy, this is feeling very difficult because this feels like a large hurdle. But what's interesting about it for the healed masculine energy is it feels like it is a hurdle within the self. While for masculine and feminine energy, that is coming into divine union right now, you've already done this work. In fact, a lot of the energy of the divine coming into divine union is being amplified by building that energetic bridge, not only from the past, but talking about the future. That is why we see so much of this energy coming into divine union right now, talking towards those plans, building forward on that path work. This is the energy that's expressed the ability to navigate that hurdle, to get over that hump, if you will, that allows one not only to have perception and clarity in the past, but being able to take that and build it forward in path work going forward. So we see even now that that conviction to the path work is almost being expedited for a lot of the energy coming into divine union right now, because this is that moment or modality. If these are situations and circumstances that someone is feeling like something is difficult, that's that moment that says whenever we create something from nothing, it's always energetically difficult. There's never the perfect time. In fact, all we effectively need to do to a certain extent is recognize when we want to do that work. So what we see here is that energy is almost coming into that conviction, and a lot of the energy coming into divine union right now, having a lot of conversation in relationality to timing. Articulating when those changes will occur, when that transformation is going to come into play, because that's where we see some of this Gemini energy that is allowing that moment of the momentum being expressed into that point of activation. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, that is deep in the heart of the divine union. This is a lot of the path work of setting one's own path and purpose. As we identified and recognized, a lot of this work that we see that the energy deep in the heart of the divine union frequency has been navigating right now, it doesn't really necessarily feel like there's an externalized point of activation. It's been the reaffirmation of the commitment to one's own path work by understanding oneself to such a degree that you're able to see one another's blind spots. You're able to do that work in understanding one's own self and one's own convictions to a heightened degree. That's not changing the direction. It's reaffirming the work, and it's making the experience of anything that you were holding that felt like it was an energetic burden. It's almost the lightening of the load and removing anything that felt like those doubts and fears of the past through the perception of how you are carrying something. That ability to see something in a different way, shifting that weight, if you will, is almost feeling like a lightening of the energetic burden. Third card in our 5-card spread for today is, we have here our 9 of Cups in its reversal. It is that moment that feels overwhelming at times for a lot of the energy deep in the heart of the divine union frequency, because what do we see that was fundamental about some of that path work? If this is energy that is feeling that easement in something that you've been carrying for a long time, specifically because you've come far enough on your own healing journey, and having the healed energy of the counterpart as a template that has adjusted your own perception on experiences from the past, that ability doesn't feel like you've lightened a load. That's not that moment that something hurts less, but that experience of having been energetically wounded, but now having a different context through which you are being able to observe the wound. That is that moment that, again, it lightens the load, if you will. And at the same time, a lot of this energy is working through the energetic challenge of recognizing, and the reason that they are doing this work is so they don't inadvertently perpetuate the same behaviors, the same unhealed experiences that may have created the wounds in the first place. And why do we see that the work energy is doing this work right now? Because the energy that went back to do this deep healing recognizes that some of those wounds that were created in them were not intentionally given, but were the result of energy that wasn't willing to do this work on the self in the first place. So that's the moment that the energy effectively feels like that point of saying, I am going to heal by not perpetuating something that is unhealed. The buck stops here. That unhealed part stops with me. Healing comes in many forms, and sometimes the moment that we say, I'm resolving that I can hold a wound, and that ability to heal something is not allowing that wound to impact and affect others in the way that it affected me, in the way that it affected the person before me, in the way that it affected them and their grandmother's grandmother's grandmother. A lot of that energy is almost feeling that weight and that sense of purpose identified not only in the pathwork of healing the self, but not perpetuating something that feels like an unhealthy cycle. Masculine and feminine energy that is coming into divine union. This is not that sense of like purpose and conviction. Maybe it is. Maybe you're having a little bit of this. These things can happen on many different planes. It's more about that sense of being able to tangibly change something. Because as I said, this isn't necessarily a moment that you're doing this deep pathwork healing. You're doing this in the present. You're experiencing something. I bet everything was just fine, but now you've got the counterpart, and suddenly the things that felt like they were just fine around you before are now feeling inconvenient. They're feeling untenable because these are energies that have changed their direction. They've changed their direction towards one another. They are creating something from nothing. And when we create that new manifestation goal, when we orient upon a purpose that we feel that we are experiencing and navigating through with a counterpart, that shift, even if it's a small shift, being able to facilitate and build with a counterpart itself can take something that felt like it was tenable while in separation, and suddenly something that feels like it was working just fine in separation becomes extremely burdensome and heavy. So what do we see that a lot of the energy coming into divine union is doing right now? They're activating on how to ease that energetic burden through the plans on pathwork going forward. While for masculine and feminine energy in separation right now, that mutual sense. We've got the lessons that are deep in the heart of the divine union frequency, and the lesson that is happening for the energy coming into the divine union frequency, resting on the shoulders of the energy in separation, which is a combination of where a lot of the heaviness is coming through right now. Because while we see that there's a lot of new energetic connections that are potentially starting to take form for energy and separation right now, this is not energy that's willing to delay a hard conversation. This is an energy that is almost saying a hard conversation is a requirement to proceed forward, because this is the energy that says, I'm trying to break an unhealthy energetic cycle, and I want to make sure that there is that ability to transform, that ability to manifest, that ability of wanting to go forward. So this energy is basically taking the accumulation of both of those energetic lessons that we just identified that's happening deeper in the heart of the divine union frequency, and applying them even in separation right now, saying, make no mistake, there's a desire to want to move forward. But the only way one can move forward is if you know where you're going. So what is the energy articulating to each other in separation? Feminine to masculine, saying, I know that you've taken the lessons from the past, but what does that mean, and what does that look like as it relates to what your determination is in terms of what it is that you want for the future? Because for the feminine energy, that ability to see masculine that is able to articulate upon the manifestation goals is the difference between the feminine energy being able to discern a masculine that truly feels that sense of being ready to build with the feminine energy, that is truly seeking divine union, versus the energy that is effectively looking at the moment for company as they heal. And that is the feminine energy saying, make no mistake, while I appreciate healing with you, I'm not working in a way of necessarily just being a placeholder while someone goes through that energetic journey of healing. That is the feminine energy that is utilizing their own power of discernment to determine whether they feel truly that a masculine is ready for closure, is ready to move forward on a cycle, or is still caught in a cycle wherein they're just focused on their own self and their own journey. Feminine is almost recognizing too that masculine won't necessarily articulate that if they don't understand that, which is why the feminine energy is utilizing their powers of perception to determine if that is so. While for masculine energy right now, that same ability to do so is something that you are recognizing and understanding. You may be identifying, especially for masculine, you may be recognizing that the stable feminine energy is not looking or seeking company. They're looking for energy that is built upon that sense of wanting to grow with them, wanting to build with them. So we see even now that for a lot of the masculine energy, that desire not to be misunderstood, that desire to not to be misinterpreted by masculine energy that isn't necessarily ready to move forward on one's own pathwork. That is the masculine energy that is trying to almost find the energetic courage to be able to articulate and to reveal to the feminine what their desires are, what their motivations are, what their goals are. But that is very difficult for masculine energy, because that is that moment for the masculine that feels it's like that moment of deep vulnerability that also amplifies a deep level of strength, right? That requires an ability to be extremely honest and vulnerable. And so we see even now that that's a very, even for the energy of the masculine in healing, that feels like a huge energetic challenge, because it creates that anxiety and that fear as to what will occur at the moment that they articulate how they feel. But masculine is almost recognizing and identifying that that ability to do so is the next step on one's own energetic journey, because that's that moment that is being amplified again. And I feel like I've got to sing this like a choir to the heavens to masculine. If by revealing your hopes and your dreams and to feminine, that moves the feminine away from you, that is not an act of rejection. That is an act of affirmation that you are not in alignment. So again, that is the masculine that's almost trying to reaffirm that to themselves so that they can articulate to the feminine energy what it is that they truly want, even at a moment where they feel like a lot of their own self is feeling the anxiety and fear in doing so. Fourth card in our 5-card spread for today is, we have here our Page of Swords in its reversal. If this guy looked familiar, it's because we had him in the same, I think it was the same exact position yesterday. Same exact position. Same exact placement in cards, same exact direction. The anxiety, the fear, the doubt in oneself, the conviction, the ability to mean what you say and to say what you mean. A lot of the masculine energy in a lot of introspection right now, if in separation. Because that ability to do so, it feels like it's being amplified both by the sense of not wanting to be misunderstood, wanting to really reaffirm one's own commitments as it relates to what that pathwork is. So for some, this is a lot of masculine energy in different directions here. For some of the masculine energy, this is making sure that one understands that within one's own self before you're articulating it to another. Making sure that one is clear in terms of what it is that you truly want as it relates to going forward. For other parts of the masculine energy and separation right now, this is having the confidence to articulate, to knowing what that is, but having the confidence to be able to articulate it to the feminine. Recognizing and identifying that moment that when you reveal one's manifestation goals to the feminine, there will be that opportunity or that decision that the feminine will make in relationality as to whether that is something that they themselves also desire. That feeling that comes in from that point of like beautiful perfection when someone says, I want that as well. But that can also lead to that moment of anxiety of potential rejection if the feminine does not desire the same manifestation goals, which is why we see that a lot of the masculine energy is working through some of that anxiety and fear, to which I will say again, if revealing your manifestation goals to a feminine masculine moves the feminine away from you, that is not an act of rejection. That is a sense of coming into alignment with someone that it wants and desires the same things as you. While for some of the masculine energy right now, this is this ability or desire to try to determine how to articulate this in a way that one will not be misunderstood. So we see even now that for the masculine, there's a lot more energetic unpacking that is happening today because there's that feeling or that need and that understanding that is being amplified by masculine, recognizing that if this is not something that they're able to bring forth to the feminine, there's a possibility of potentially losing an energetic connection with the feminine. Feminine energy also in that same modality and separation. The simple truth is this is not feminine energy that's trying to force a spring. This is a feminine energy that may even be recognizing that there may be that uncertainty or that fear in the masculine. But this is a feminine energy that's basically saying it's not the feminine energy's responsibility to try to generate that within the masculine. I told you a lot of that feminine energy is healing right now by reaffirming to themselves that for a masculine to be able to articulate to the feminine what they want and desire in the long term is not an accomplishment. It's not an accomplishment. It is a requirement. So we see even now that that's the feminine energy that is just utilizing their powers of discernment to see if that is there, and particularly are potentially articulating that to the masculine in some way, shape, or form to help them recognize that that is not like a brass ring that the feminine is trying to reach for and accomplish. That's just something that the feminine is trying to see is present in there. Because that is the difference between the feminine trying to become accommodating, malleable, too overly malleable to masculine. That's the feminine building that sense of energetic security in the manifestation of saying, feminine saying, I know what I want going forward. I am manifesting masculine energy that is able to articulate also what they want. And that's the feminine that's also releasing that point in terms of saying to themselves, I'm not going to agonize as to why that might not be if it's not present. I'm just going to observe that it's not there. While for masculine and feminine energy coming into divine union, this is the energetic equivalent of knowing what it is that you want, of moving towards that with a great degree of conviction and capacity right now. The hurdle has more to do with the emotionality that is connected to it, because we see even now, particularly for masculine and feminine, this is that moment that feels like the reaffirmation as it relates to the commitment towards how one is moving energetically. But as we said, a lot of this energy that is coming into the divine union frequency right now, there has been a lot of that deepening of connection that is being amplified in relationality to being open and honest with oneself about one's doubts, one's fears, one's uncertainties. This is the energy that has been working on their own confidence in the process of doing that. Because a lot of the energy doing this is the first time that you may be energetically trying to do something of this magnitude. There could be that moment, that is almost that moment that feels that amplification point. If you don't feel like you know that what you're doing, you might be doing it right? Because this is energy that is creating something from nothing. There's that moment that those points of doubt and fear and anxiety arise. But what is that energy doing right now? As they have those moments of insecurity or uncertainty in one's own ability to navigate something. That is the beauty of the energy of working with a counterpart, because when you're working towards a manifestation goal with a counterpart, what is the affirmation of the counterpart? It's that reminder that you're not doing it alone. It's that reminder that says you are not alone. I am with you. I am with you. We are doing this together. And some days you need that energetic equivalent. You just need a little bit of that push. Remember that Gemini push over the hump that reminds you and reaffirms to you that you're not working on one's own, like in the capacity all entirely by oneself, but that sense of having that support, just having that like steady guidance in relationality to being able to focus on what it is that you're trying to achieve together. Sometimes that's all we need to help us when those doubts, those fears, and those uncertainties arise. Well, for masculine and feminine energy, deep in the heart of the divine union, we see that a lot of the work, a lot of the accomplishments that you've just facilitated have reinforced and deepened one's own connection with the counterpart. And I'll say this again, these are not energies that went ahead and did that introspection and that deep path work for the sake of the counterpart, but it was certainly being facilitated by it. That's the work of being able to address something or face something that you feel like you couldn't have faced before, specifically due to the fact that you feel that equivalency. You feel that sense of recognizing that the perception of seeing the healed energy with you is amplifying your own conviction and commitment to be able to navigate territory that you may have felt that insecurity or uncertainty in doing were you just in solitude, right? That's that moment of saying to someone, thank you for being there while I went through that internally, and someone almost saying like, I didn't do anything, and someone being like, you did more than you did. I know you don't think you did, but you did, because that's that moment of feeling the energetic presence of the healed energy that amplifies the sense of feeling that fortification and being able to go in that pathwork of introspection that allows for that sense of grounding, right? Sometimes we just need that anchor. Continuing on this fifth card in our 5-card spread for today is Ace of Pentacles in its reversal. Now, all we can do is everything that we can do. And one of the things that's really beautiful about this work right now, particularly for a lot of the energy deep in the heart of the divine union frequency right now, is that sense or that state. Like, this is exactly what I mean with that energy saying, like, you know, that's that moment of, again, the energy working in this facility or this capacity, in that sense of effectively saying to oneself, these are the energies that are going on this pathwork of introspection deep in the heart of the divine union frequency that is amplified, and someone being like, so you don't give someone a hug and be like, thank you, and being like, well, I didn't do anything. They'd be like, you did. Because that's that moment that just feels like being in the energetic presence of healed counterpart, creates that sense of clarity, of comparison. Because what did we just see that was happening right now for a lot of the energy deep in the heart of the divine union frequency? If these were pathworks of perception, one's own ability to perceive something from a healed state is what is allowing a heightened degree of healing. And when we're recognizing and we're healing something from a healed state, it doesn't require that facilitation of doing something. It's just being in the energetic presence that allows for that point of comparison, re-amplifies a lot of that conviction to the energy in terms of what they experienced from the past, being able to face it in a way that they hadn't before, and then being able to build that resolve in oneself and saying, I'm not going to allow that energetic harmful cycle to perpetuate. That is that moment that feels so overwhelming. It feels like that sense of gratitude, because that's that moment in seeing how far one has traveled that allowed one to be able to release an energetic burden that you were carrying from the past. While for masculine and feminine energy that is coming into divine union right now, this is a lot of the energy that is feeling that reaffirmation in relationality to the commitment in terms of what you are moving towards going forward. This is a lot of that energy feeling the discomfiture in something that may have felt perfectly navigable, perfectly comfortable prior to coming into the divine union frequency. This is that scratchy sweater that we were talking about yesterday. The moment that something feels like it shifts and something that you feel was just fine when you were healing in separation, suddenly that ability and that ability to like reprioritize due to moving with the counterpart is requiring some of this adjustment. It's requiring some of this shifting, because we see even now what occurs in those moments that a divine union forms. It's like it drops, it like creates something from nothing. It creates something that is there that did not exist prior to the divine union. So that ability to like drop that weight in, it's like it creates those ripples. So we see even now that this is the energy that is moving into that state of tangibly bringing the divine union into the reality of what you're experiencing energetically. So we see a lot of that work right now in plans, in adjustments, in coming into that state of like solidifying a commitment towards a counterpart that feels like it's already there. While for masculine and feminine energy, and it's funny because it's interesting, because in the coming into divine union, it doesn't feel, I need to stress this, it's not like the tangible commitment creates the energetic connection. It's the fact that it almost feels like it's unnecessary, it's inconvenient, but you're doing that to be able to amplify the energetic commitment that you already feel towards the counterpart. While for masculine and feminine energy that is in separation right now, a lot of the energy in separation is effectively recognizing this. This is the energy that's saying the opposite of what the energy coming into divine union is saying, which is basically saying, if you don't feel it within you, I can't generate it without. This is why the feminine energy isn't trying to force the spring of the masculine right now. This is the feminine saying, if I don't see that desire of the masculine coming towards me with intentionality as it relates to what it is that they want going forward, this is the feminine energy saying, I just need to observe that. I don't need to change it. I don't need to make it my coursework. I don't need to make it my priority to try to create that in the masculine. The feminine energy in separation is saying, it's just my job to observe if it's there. And so we see that a lot of the feminine energy is maintaining that sense of focus, because that is the clarity and the healing that a lot of the feminine energy in separation is navigating to. Feminine energy is potentially even recalling that a lot of the pathwork up until this point may have been the result of them trying to force a spring, trying to bring something, trying to generate the masculine coming towards them with intention. But also the feminine recognizing and remembering that one cannot create intention in another. One observes if intention is there. I'm going to say that again for the people in the back. One's job when coming into energy of coming towards a counterpart is not trying to create intention in another. The feminine energy is just recognizing whether it is there, whether that intention is there, trying to identify the intention of purpose, and recognizing that if it is not there, regardless of whether that is coming from a masculine that is too afraid, does not have the confidence in themselves to offer that, or if that is a masculine that is not desiring to offer it at all, that's the feminine that's basically saying, bearing in mind this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to. Unfortunately, sad but true, it doesn't matter whether that is coming as a result of the masculine that is not healed enough to overcome their fear, or if that's a result of masculine that does not desire that motivation of moving forward, that doesn't have that pathwork carved out for themselves. That's the feminine saying, I just need to identify if that's the case or not. While for masculine, that sense of recognition of potentially feeling that sense or that degree of feminine that is seeking that. This is not the masculine energy that is doing so for the counterpart, but this is the masculine energy that is recognizing and remembering that they themselves have gone through a pathwork where, again, the ability to tell the feminine what one aspires, what one desires, what one dreams, that ability in doing so is what creates something from nothing. It is how we build a connection with an energy. So we see even now that this is a lot of the masculine overcoming their own doubts and fears, but really going into that point of introspection, in asking oneself what it is that one truly wants, to be able to articulate it to the feminine from a place of intentionality and clarity. Because masculine is also working on leading with intention, but also overcoming your own doubts and fears in doing so. And that is being further amplified by the recognition of the healed masculine in identifying that when one does not overcome one's own fear, one becomes what the feminine truly fears, which is a masculine that is potentially not leading forward in describing their manifestation goals because they recognize or they feel that the feminine would not ascribe or desire those same goals. So we see even now that a lot of the masculine energy in a point of healing is overcoming their own fears to be able not to be misinterpreted by the feminine as someone that they feel that they need to avoid. So we see even now that that's a lot of the masculine trying to become into that state of becoming the energetic protector of the feminine through the ability of finding that courage within one's own self. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our 10 of Wands in combination with our Hangman in its reversal. One card to clarify, please. Clarification coming through right now with our 2 of Cups in its reversal. Masculine and feminine energy in separation. This work, it's heavy, it's hard. And I even see right now this switch into Gemini season, it almost does feel like a little bit of a switch that's gotten hit here, because especially if these were new energetic connections that were starting to form, this ability of recognition, this ability of being able to see that sense of clarity of intention, it feels a lot like that moment of reaffirmation. And again, when we build that energetic bridge with someone, being able to talk about the past is half of that bridge. Being able to observe the past is half of that bridge. Being able to feel that sense of alignment in relationality to the experiences that one has learned from the past is half that bridge. The rest of the bridge is formed by the ability to talk about what one desires moving forward. The ability to take that energy of the lesson and put it into practice. The ability to activate upon those experiences and articulate as it relates to what that has, not in relationality just to where you are at the present, but what that looks like going forward. So we see even now that a lot of that energy right now, masculine and feminine, in coming like in separation, is maintaining that focus of perspective in recognizing whether someone is ready to come into the closure of the past that is being amplified by an ability to articulate upon what one desires and aspires going forward. And that is a lot of that moment for feminine. It feels like kind of navigating things with an open palm, being willing and ready to let something energetically go, simply in the perception as to whether they see if that ability is present. This is almost the feminine saying, again, this isn't a moment of feminine seeking energetic commitment from masculine in articulating this, especially if these are new energetic connections. This is the feminine energy trying to identify if the presence or the desire of mutual manifestations is there. And that's the feminine energy in separation, basically amplifying and saying that that need or desire is there, not to feel like one needs to energetically force that spring, not to feel like someone's ability to articulate upon what they desire going forward is an accomplishment. That is that feminine energy saying it is a requirement. And the feminine energy saying that that ability to identify doing so is a requirement is the feminine staying on the pathwork of healing from the experience of the past. That is the feminine energy creating closure from the past experience, because something about that may have felt like it was essentially missing from the experiences of the past that was the energetic lesson. While for masculine energy, your own doubts and fears in relationality to doing so may feel like they are being energetically tested today, because while we see that a lot of the masculine energy, you've been moving forward in this direction. You've been building that sense of conviction and commitment to oneself. It does feel like you're like crossing a Rubicon in doing that. There's that moment of the masculine recognizing that when one speaks about what one hopes and desires and aspires going forward, there's that sense of recognizing that there's no going backwards. So we see even now that that's a lot of the masculine energy, feeling that sense of confidence, feeling that sense, really going through an internal energy right now and saying, am I ready to let go? Am I ready to move forward? So we see even now that a lot of the masculine energy is almost struggling with that, because that is that moment that feels like the amplification of the pathwork going forward, that also makes the masculine more present and appreciative of the level of energetic closure that is required as it relates to doing so. While for masculine and feminine energy that is coming into divine union, this is the energy that's ready to do so. This is the energy that's already done so. This is the energy that is feeling, and they're not like, this is the energy that's almost saying like there's no going back. Because this is the energy that is feeling the discomfort. Right? This is that moment that feels like the amplification of joy, because when we build the sense of coming into a point of recognizing that the prioritization becomes the divine union, then everything else, like the weight shifts, everything else in our life, everything shifts around us, specifically because it's like we view everything through those new optics. So we see even now that this is the energy that's coming into divine union, that like things that felt like they were previously manageable are now feeling like the energetic burden, because the weight has shifted in relationality to where one's own priorities are. While for masculine and feminine energy that is doing that deep pathwork of healing something from the deep past, a lot of that energy at this moment is feeling the amazing weight or the recognition point. And I need to stress it. It is that strange little paradox that this energy is experiencing that is being recognized. It's not because of the counterpart that one is doing something. It's not that someone has done something here. It is simply in being in the presence of another healed energetic counterpart, having that point of observation that creates that sense of energetic clarity in seeing something that one could not see in relationality to a long-held wound that was potentially created from energy that was not in the same vector of healing. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Hangman in its reversal and our Nine of Cups in its reversal. One card to clarify, please. Clarification coming through right now with our Six of Pentacles. This is really interesting because a lot of the energy deep in the heart of the divine union frequency is reaffirming. They're like, it's the reaffirmation of the commitment not to do that. It's the reaffirmation of the commitment not to do that. This is energy deep in the heart of the divine union frequency that is basically saying, like, the affirmation, if you've gone back in pathwork and you saw the fact that there was something that was created, a wound inside of you because of an unhealthy karmic connection between masculine and feminine, bearing in mind this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to. This is the pathwork of the healer that says, my affirmation is not to do that. Sometimes healing's real easy. Sometimes healing is what you don't do as much as what you do. And this is the energy that is basically reaffirming one's own commitment in not wanting to turn a blind eye to one's own insecurities, one's own doubts, and one's own fear. This is why this energy is working so hard and is so committed to understanding themselves, because they recognize and identify that in the lack of understanding of oneself, inadvertent wounds can be occurred in those around us. And this is the energy that is trying to be very mindful of not inadvertently hurting someone because of something within themselves that they cannot see. While for masculine and feminine energy that is coming into the divine union right now, this is the moment that everything around you is becoming more inconvenient because one's own priorities have shifted to such a degree that where you want to put your time, effort, and energy is such, everything around you to a certain extent needs a little bit of reorientation, if you will. So we see even now that this feels like a lot of energetic shifting as these energies facilitate something that feels like it allows for the prioritization of the divine union. That again isn't feeling like it is being forced. It's almost that energy feeling the inevitability of something that is amplifying a need to do something sooner rather than later. Masculine and feminine in separation. What did I just say is happening for the energy in divine, coming into divine union? Why put off doing the hard thing? The hard thing, when put off, typically doesn't get easier. It just becomes more hard. That is the energy in separation. A lot of the lessons of the energy in separation is almost reaffirming masculine and feminine, saying that moment of understanding. If this is feminine energy that sees or identifies an inability in the masculine to articulate upon what those manifestation goals are, this is the feminine energy saying that's not necessarily something that's going to get better in time. That's potentially something that is going to get worse. That is not an aspiration. I cannot move forward. And this is how the feminine is also healing themselves right now. This is the feminine energy that's not assuming. This is not the feminine energy saying, if I see something, maybe in time it'll be there. This is the feminine energy reaffirming their own commitment to the pathwork and lessons and saying, if I don't see something there in the masculine, bearing in mind this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to, I cannot assume that time will create it there. I cannot assume that time will create something there if there is nothing there. I have to assume that what I see is what I am going to receive from the masculine. And that's very hard for the feminine. That's very hard for the feminine to do. That feels why? Because the feminine feels like they're not being generous. They feel like they're not being generous to the masculine, but that's the feminine that's remembering the pathwork and saying, in previous experiences, my assumption that something that was not there would appear is what potentially created a vector where I had to heal from something. So this is the feminine reaffirming that focus and saying, I must not assume that something that I aspire for to see in the masculine will appear if it's not there. This is not the masculine pulling a rabbit out of a hat. This is the feminine saying, if it's there, it will be there. Feminine's been manifesting the masculine energy that is able to express the ability to articulate upon those manifestation goals. For masculine, this is the masculine energy, recognizing the same work, recognizing the same experience, identifying that same pathwork of purpose, and reaffirming to their own self. If I don't tell the feminine, and this is the masculine energy, I gotta stress, this is the masculine energy that almost feels the sense that they recognize that feminine's kind of a mind reader. Like, this is the masculine being like, well, I know that a part of them probably knows I feel this way, but this is the masculine also reaffirming to themselves and saying, I cannot allow that moment of assuming that the feminine energy assumes. This is the masculine energy remembering that ability of not creating a world of illusion around feminine means that you're not making the feminine energy exist in a world of assumption, because the world of illusion is the world of assumption. So this is the masculine energy that is coming into a point of confidence in saying, I don't want the feminine energy to feel that uncertainty in whether I'm building towards them from a state of illusion. The only way I can affirm to the feminine that I am on the healing journey, that I want to build with them, is by articulating what I want. And so this is the masculine energy overcoming their own doubts and fears by reaffirming that that is also the result of the path work that they have set themselves on the course of, if on the healing journey. Continuing on these cards right now, between our Nine of Cups in its reversal in combination with our Page of Swords in its reversal. One card to clarify, please. This is the clarification with our Seven of Wands in its reversal. You know how we don't make things difficult? We make them very easy. And this is the energy that, again, if in separation, going through that moment of saying, if something is starting to feel energetically difficult, this is the feminine energy saying, I'm not going to sit and navigate that moment of trying to force a spring. This is the feminine energy that is effectively identifying and articulating and saying the feminine is manifesting. And this is what we mean. This is the feminine saying, I'm not matching energy. I'm holding energy to an energetic standard. What's the difference between that? When we match energy, that means if someone is being resistant or reluctant, well, like, I'll just do that to them too. I'll show them how it feels. Feminine's not doing that. Feminine's saying, why would I change my own self to match the energy someone else is giving? This is the feminine energy saying, I'm holding myself to a higher energetic standard. And when we hold ourselves to a higher energetic standard, we work through that pathwork of discernment. We just look to see if something is there. We look to see if someone is willing to match our energy. We don't match theirs. That is the difference between matching energy and holding energy to a higher energetic standard. So we see even now that a lot of the feminine energy is staying in alignment with their highest version of self by saying, it's not my job to bring that out in a masculine. It's simply my job to perceive whether it's there. And it's not my job to fight about why that is, or to argue with the masculine, or to come into that point of feeling like I need to work for it. This is the feminine energy basically saying, I just need to perceive if it is present. While for the masculine energy, bearing in mind that this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to, that is that moment that also feels like that sense of coming into one's own power, coming into one's own conviction. And a lot of that masculine energy, you're working through that sense of confidence in one's own self. But that requires a moment of introspection. So we see even now that there may be a lot of the masculine energy in separation right now that is doing that work of introspection, really asking oneself what it is that I truly want in order to offer that, and recognizing that ability of identifying and saying, what I say has meaning. I want my actions to match my words. So this is the masculine energy that is feeling on that healing journey, that sense or that desire to be energetically accountable. And especially if this is work of masculine, trying to heal that space or place of putting feminine energy in a place of building a world of illusion or building into a world of assumption. This is the masculine energy that says the way that I am not misunderstood is by being someone who understands, and who creates that space or place of being able to articulate what it is that I desire with the feminine, is how I create that world with the feminine instead of creating a world around a feminine. So we see even now that that's a lot of the masculine energy, building that sense of energetic confidence, because that is the masculine energy that looks in the mirror potentially and you see that fear within yourself. You identify that uncertainty. And that's that moment that feels like that sense of coming into your own power and recognizing your own ability to manifest what it is that you truly desire and aspire if you give yourself the ability to dream. So that's a lot of the masculine energy saying, like, what is it that I dream? What is it that I truly desire? Let me speak that into words by articulating that dream to the feminine. While for masculine and feminine energy coming into divine union, this is the energy that's done so. This is the energy that is building together. And this is the energy of the masculine. Why is the masculine energy prioritizing the feminine? Because this is masculine energy that went to the work of being able to reveal their self through vulnerability to the feminine. This is a masculine energy that has revealed their dreams to the feminine and has felt the safety and the security of the feminine holding their dreams as they would their own. What does the masculine do? What is that commitment? Masculine holds the wounds of the feminine as if they were their own. Feminine holds the dreams of the masculine as if they were their own. This is how these energies work with one another. This is how they build together. This is the energies of the counterparts that come together to create something where nothing is. That ability begins with the sense of trust, of navigating forward, and that ability to be vulnerable is the strength of the energy that's in the divine union frequency. So we see even now the gift of the divine union frequency are moments that when you are not feeling strong, well, there's the counterpart to give you that little push, right? To give you that little reminder that you're not doing something alone, you're doing it together. While for masculine and feminine energy deep in the heart of the divine union frequency, that ability in doing so, this is what's allowing you to heal something that you may have been carrying for a very long time. And that's that beauty of like looking at the counterpart and saying, thank you. Thank you for your help. And that's almost the energy saying, I didn't do anything. And that's the moment that you look at someone and say, you've done more than you can imagine, because it is simply being in the presence of an energy that is healed, that heals one's own perception on the past by having a vector through which you can see something in a different way. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now, between our Page of Swords in its reversal and our Ace of Pentacles in its reversal, may I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with our Seven of Cups in its reversal. Masculine and feminine energy in the divine union frequency, there's that moment that you just kind of want to laugh, because it's that moment of someone almost looking to the other and saying, I didn't do anything. And someone being like, you have no idea what you've done. Right? Like it's that moment that feels like the breakthrough, and it's not necessarily something that feels like you've been like, this is what we mean by that like subtle moment when something happens and you don't put your intentionality to it, but it's just simply from the state of being that a point of understanding is reached because you can see something in a different way. And that's that gift that we give each other, because the more work that we do within ourselves, the more we're able to give that to those around us simply through the act of being. So we see even now that a lot of the energy deep in the heart of the divine union frequency is having those moments of profound clarity as it relates to experiences from their own pathwork and their own journey that are being facilitated, not necessarily by someone activating upon something, but simply being in the presence of energy that allows that sense of security and safety to be able to understand and inhabit something in a way that you haven't before. While for masculine and feminine energy that is coming into the divine union frequency, that ability in doing so, that is something that feels like it is energetically facilitated right now because your own priorities are shifting, right? And that's that moment that it doesn't feel like someone is forcing that shift in you, right? That's not the tangible commitment and being like, I told someone I would do this. That is that moment that feels like your heart space is driving you in a direction because of the energetic commitment that you feel towards a counterpart. And it's that inevitability, because it's almost that moment, like I told you, the momentum of the Taurus season going up, the Gemini season is just like right down the hill, because that's that moment that is the peak of the hill with the twins that allows for that moment that feels like that inevitability, that momentum that is then able to kind of move quickly, because that's that moment that it is the amplification of the connection that drives the intentional action towards what you are feeling. While for masculine and feminine energy that is in separation, this is that moment that those same lessons are coming to the energy in separation. There's like newsflash, you can't force something that's not there. It's either there or it's not. You got to feel it. If it's there, it's being felt. If someone is feeling it, they'll articulate it. It's feeling it, but also articulating it. So we see even now that there's a lot of that ability to build a connection and talking about the past. But this is the energy saying, can you get over the hill with it? Are you ready? Are you ready to move forward on this? Or are you holding on to something from the past so much that it's holding you back from being able to take those lessons and apply them forward into experience? So we see even now that a lot of that energy and separation is having that moment of looking towards the counterpart and saying, it sounds like you've had a lot of a long journey up until this point. It seems like you've learned a lot of lessons. Are you ready to apply those lessons? Are you ready to affirm those commitments? Are you ready to talk about those manifestation goals? Are you ready to make a choice in how you're going forward? Because again, a lot of the energy in separation recognizes that there's a lot of energy in separation that stays in separation simply because of the anxiety in the recognition point that when we make a choice, we move forward. When we make a choice, we move forward. Closure is received going forward, not going backwards. So we see even now a lot of that energy is almost looking towards new counterpart connections saying, are you ready to go forward? Or are you still scanning your options? Are you still trying to decide what that direction is? Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Two of Cups in its reversal and our Six of Pentacles in its upright. One card to clarify, please. Clarification coming through right now with our Magician. Perfect timing. In its upright. Right? And that's that moment. Because what do we see that a lot of the energy in separation is saying to one another? You need to want it. You need to want it. You need to want it as much as I want it. You need to be able to decide on what that is. And that's the energy that almost is looking towards a counterpart and saying, and a lot of the energy in separation right now, almost looking towards one another and articulating and amplifying and saying, listen, when we move into connection, that's that moment that feels like we do, like there is that moment that feels like that is that surrender of one's own personal motivations, of one's own personal journey. There are moments that we recognize that when we come into the sense of coming into divine union, that's that amplification of changing one's own journey. Moving away from the amplification of just doing what one personally desires, but having that mindfulness of the counterpart at all times. That's not something to go into without that sense of being ready. But again, the gift of the energy that is moving into the divine union is recognizing that that's not a surrendering of something beautiful. That's coming into something even more beautiful potentially. But there needs to be that desire of wanting that. Then unless you see that as a gift, then it will always serve as a limitation. So this is the energy that's almost looking towards the counterpart if in separation and saying, do you see this in the same way? Are you truly looking for a counterpart? Or are you just looking for a companion? Are you just looking for a sidekick? Are you just looking to someone that facilitates around you? Or are you truly looking for someone that you build with? So we see even now that a lot of that energy is looking towards one another in separation and saying, how do you perceive partnership? Are you looking for a partnership? Are you looking for an intentional commitment with another energy? Or are you looking for a situation where you can effectively do what you desire and just have someone around you to facilitate with you as you do so? So this is the energy in separation that's basically saying, which are you seeking? And that is the energy that's almost amplifying that ability of saying, that's the energy in separation that's almost saying, I want to know what it is that you are seeking. Because even the ability to articulate on what it is that you want in partnership is that moment that is that recognition point of someone saying, what is it that you seek for yourself? And your ability to articulate and say what it is that you seek for yourself is the amplification of effectively identifying whether the energy feels like it is ready to move towards divine union, or if that is energy that is truly indicating whether they would prefer to stay in separation, to have the autonomy to do what they want, to move in a way that is simply based on their own self and their own ego. That is the energy right now in separation that is amplifying that ability of saying, I can't force you to think in a different way. I just want to navigate and see what it is that you want. While for the energy that is coming into divine union, that is that moment of excitement. That is that moment of joy. Because that is that moment of feeling that sense of saying, I'm not feeling like I'm doing this within myself. I feel like we're energetically doing it together. And that is that moment that feels so beautiful, because we see even now that a lot of that energy that is coming into the divine union frequency, it feels like that moment of joy, because they're making all of those adjustments, because that sense of separation is something that feels like it's untenable, because that's that moment that feels like you're not necessarily even like trying to move towards someone. It just feels like you're moving towards your own energy, right? Because these are the energies that if you're doing that work in holding another person's wounds as your own, if you're holding another person's dreams as your own, that is not an act of separation. That is that moment of feeling that sense of completeness in relationality to building something together that allows for that moment of enhanced strength and security, because that's that moment that feels like, again, it doesn't feel like a separate experience. It feels like coming home. Continuing to get clarification, that moment that we see right now for a lot of the energy deep in the heart of the divine union, that is that moment of clarity, that this is the energy that is built forth with one another to such an extent that the security and confidence that you have simply being in the presence of healed counterpart energy is building a sense of clarity on anything that may have come prior to this moment that felt like it wasn't in alignment, that felt like it wasn't creating those spaces and places. And that is the reaffirmation of the energy deep in the heart of the divine union frequency that is building upon that sense of recognizing and identifying. They're not doing this work for the sake of the counterpart. They're doing it for the sake of understanding their own self to such a degree that they're effectively that identification point and saying, I want to see my own blind spots so that I don't inadvertently harm others, in the recognition that a lot of the wounds that we experience are as a result of energy that wasn't necessarily intending to hurt another, but also because they were not ready to do that work for themselves, that they inadvertently hurt others in spaces or places that they were not ready to heal within themselves. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Six of Pentacles in combination with our Seven of Wands in its reversal. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with our Two of Swords in its upright. Masculine and feminine energy that is in the divine union frequency. A lot of that work, it feels like, again, it's not necessarily work that we see that is being amplified by a great change around you right now. So much so as it's that moment of perception. And what do we see that is happening right now for a lot of the energy deep in the heart of the divine union frequency? That ability to be able to look at something from the deep past with a heightened sense of clarity, given the perception or the perspective of where you are now. That is that energetic equivalent. You can't necessarily force that. It's something that you just have to experience because you've come far enough on one's own healing journey that you can see something in a way that it creates a sense of clarity, because you've kind of risen up through the difficulty, right? It's like you've got that cloud break, so you're able to see something from a vantage point that allows a level or degree of clarity that you might not necessarily have seen something before. And even in that moment, that doesn't necessarily create an activation point, but it creates a point of peace. It creates a point of contemplation. So we see even now that a lot of the energy experiencing that, it's like, it's not that the burden goes away, but it certainly makes something energetically easier, because it comes with it comes a sense of understanding. While for masculine and feminine energy that is coming into divine union, it doesn't feel as peaceful right now, because you're doing more of that work in the present context of trying to, of like like changing and shifting things in the present moment to accommodate how you're energetically feeling. Right? This is the moment that, like, the headspace is great. Everything around it is a mess. But we see even now that a lot of that energy that's doing that work is coming into that space of making something more accommodating in the present to match that feeling of energetic union that they're feeling within the self. While for masculine and feminine energy that is in separation, this is that moment that feels like, it feels a little bit like a surrender moment. especially for feminine energy right now. Because for the feminine energy, there's a little bit of that sadness or frustration that's carried in those moments, because this is the feminine that acknowledges and recognizes and says, I can't make something, I don't want to let my own ability to like hope remove my ability to perceive. And so this is the feminine energy that's just bringing a lot of clarity into play, especially as it relates to new energetic connections. Reaffirming to themselves and saying, I'm not going to assume something is there if I'm not seeing it. If something's not being articulated, I'm not going to imagine that it's there. I'm going to allow that to be self-evident. Words mean nothing without action. So this is the feminine energy that may ask the question, seeking the answer. And if the answer is not brought forth, this isn't the feminine energy trying to chase down the masculine for that. That's not the feminine energy saying, I guess I have to be a bit patient. That's the feminine energy saying it's either there or it's not. And if it's not there, that's the feminine energy almost saying, better to know now. Better to have that pain now than to continue forward, because the feminine energy has experienced those moments of saying, this is the feminine remembering their own pathwork and going, I remember the time where I assumed something would be coming over time and it never did. So this is the feminine healing that and saying, I'm not going to allow the vector of time to create intentionality. I'm just going to see if the intention is there. While for masculine energy, that point of recognition, masculine, you may even be perceiving that the feminine is in this modality. And while we see that this isn't changing the masculine, that point of recognition, that point of understanding that the feminine energy that is moving forward is not necessarily in a state or space where they're going to effectively wait for masculine energy to catch up. This is the feminine energy that's basically like, I got my bags packed, I'm going that way. Which direction are you going? And looking towards the masculine. This is the masculine that is feeling that amplification of choice to a certain extent, masculine, because even the desire to build forth towards feminine feels like that sense of affirmation in relation to making that energetic choice. So what we identify here even now is for a lot of that masculine energy, your own ability to amplify what that choice is, it feels very difficult. Because we see that a lot of the masculine energy, I see that a lot of this energy right now, you are feeling the weight of recognizing that when we make a choice, you can't go back. You can't unring some bells. But that sense of feeling the confidence in relationality to how you go forward, that is that moment that almost feels like whether you're asking yourself, are you staying in a space where you're constantly waiting and you're constantly feeling dissatisfied? Or is that moment that you're going to allow your intentionality of purpose to drive you forward as it relates to being able to seek what it is that you desire? And we see even now that that's a lot of the masculine energy in separation coming into that point of confidence. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Seven of Wands in its reversal and our Seven of Cups in its reversal. Have you guys seen all the double cards we've been giving ever since Gemini season started? We had the double threes yesterday. We had the double fours yesterday. And now we've got the double sevens. So now we've got the double sevens coming up here. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with the Judgment in its reversal. I know it's hard, right? Because we see, oh, this is such Gemini energy, Jesus. We see here that a lot of the energy in separation is struggling with the amplification of like, but what if I change my mind? But what if I change my mind? So we see even now that a lot of that energy, especially the masculine, there's that moment. Here's the thing though that's really interesting is that a lot of the masculine energy in separation, this may be one of those moments where you may have felt like leaving one's own options open was a choice. But we see even now like that recognition point that when you leave all your options open, all you've done is make the choice to leave all your options open. That's a choice. Like leaving one's options open is a choice, but it's a limiting choice. It like keeps you in a holding pattern. It keeps you in a certain place, right? Like you're like, when you move forward in that way, it's like, yeah, you can stay there as long as you want. Some people spend their whole life in that point of not making a choice. So we see even now that for a lot of the masculine energy, that ability of working through, this is a lot, I gotta say, this is a lot of masculine energy, bearing in mind this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to. Recognizing that the fear of missing out will have you missing everything. The fear of missing out will have you missing everything. And so we see even now that a lot of the masculine energy, recognizing that, maybe a lot of the masculine energy, reconsidering one's own experiences from the past with that point of clarity. So, and that moment itself is almost begging the question for a lot of the masculine in separation, saying, what is it that I want? What is it that I'm seeking beyond the sense of just wanting to seek? Is your manifestation just keeping one's options open? Because that's life. So a lot of that is helping a lot of the masculine energy right now build that sense of purpose. Because the manifestation goal of saying, I want to manifest having my options open. I mean, you could do that. You know, you could say like, what do you want? I want everything. Well, it's like, okay, that wanting everything is kind of like wanting nothing. So we see even now that a lot of the masculine energy working through that is that moment of the masculine, like working on saying to oneself, like, what is it that you're truly looking to manifest? Like, what does that look like? What's the shape of it? You want to articulate on it? There could be a lot of feminine energy that's like having this conversation with masculine right now and helping the masculine energy recognize and being like, if this is a masculine, it's like, I want to keep my options open. I want everything. That's almost the feminine saying the masculine. Sounds to me like you don't want anything. Sounds to me like that's actually someone saying that they don't want anything. While for masculine and feminine energy that is coming into divine union, this is that moment where your choice is amplified and re-articulated and saying, what else could I possibly want? Right? The connection with the counterpart is one that doesn't feel like it closes a door. It feels like every possibility is open, because that's that moment of feeling like you've come towards yourself enough. You've found yourself. This is energy that feels like, again, everything else becomes the energetic inconvenience, because the desire to build forth together is the manifestation goal in whatever form that feels like it takes. And that's very beautiful. And so we see even now that is the energy that's readjusting, repositioning in that glorious moment of saying, I never thought I'd feel like this. And that's that ability that allows for anything to be possible, because that's that a moment that opens possibilities, that opens experiences, because that's that moment of experiencing something in a different way that suddenly everything feels new again. While for masculine and feminine energy, deep in the heart of the divine union frequency, this ability to experience those moments, these abilities to identify and to be able to be with a counterpart to such an extent that you're able to go back to past experiences and see them with a heightened degree of clarity and understanding. That is that moment that feels like an energetic breakthrough, simply in the sense of being able to identify that it's not that the counterpart has done anything, but simply being in the presence of an energy that helps you identify and find those parts of yourself is that moment that you see with that heightened degree of clarity, because you feel like you're coming more into yourself than you ever have before. So these are the energies that are almost amplifying that commitment to another by saying you do everything, even in the moment that you've done nothing. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Magician card in its upright and our Two of Swords. May I please have one card to clarify? One card to clarify, please. Clarification coming through right now with our 7. We got all 3 sevens out today. Our 7 of Pentacles. Look at all this 7. Masculine and feminine energy that is in the heart of the divine union frequency. I told you the only thing that's happened with some of this breakthrough that you may have been experiencing over experiences from the past, it hasn't changed any of your direction. but it definitely has added a new layer or level of energetic conviction to something. Because it's almost that moment of peace, of understanding that reinforces and revitalizes your own path of purpose in a new way. While for masculine and feminine that is coming into divine union, that energetic equivalent of being able to recognize and understand and feel that sense of adjustment, it's that moment that, it almost feels like that sense of patience. Because I need to stress, these are not energies that are moving towards manifestation goals for the sake of feeling like they're going to be in better union when they get there. This is the energy that already feels like that feels like what they have with one another is becoming energetically perfect. And that almost creates that sense of patience in relationality to the manifestation goals. Because again, what do we talk about when we talk about manifestation? We don't move towards manifestation goals hoping to change, hoping to assume that we'll be different than where we are energetically. We have to recognize and identify that the way that we feel now is how we will feel when we get there. But this is the energy that is feeling the harmony on the ride as they move towards those points. This is the energy that says, it doesn't matter where we go or what we do, I just want to feel that energy of being able to move with you. While for masculine and feminine energy that is in separation, a lot of that energy is again having that moment that is amplifying and saying, I need to know where it is that you want to go, because I want to see if what you aspire and desire is in alignment with what I desire, because these energies are starting to build that energetic connection with each other. And what has this energy learned? The energy has learned the anxiety and fear of what occurs when you build a connection with someone without navigating as to whether you share the same manifestation goals. Because if you do that and then you find out the manifestation goals, you may reach an impasse point. So what happens when you build an energetic connection and then there's an impasse point? That can feel very energetically painful, because that can feel like a moment that you may be feeling like you're being pulled away from your manifestation goal too far in the desire to want to stay close and present to an energy. So what are these energies doing? They're doing the hard part first. They're saying better to find out now if we have the same manifestation goals, to reaffirm and make sure that there will not be that moment of impasse wherein we desire different things and then we feel the pain of having an energetic connection that is being pulled in oppositional directions. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Two of Swords in combination with our Judgment card in its reversal. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with the catharsis that comes through and identifying that, the Six of Swords in its reversal. Because this is effectively that moment or that experience wherein we're seeing, this is the energy. Listen, this is just energy and separation. I have to say there's energy right now that started to build forth with someone and is now having that moment of saying better now than later. Better now than later. Better now than later. This is the energy that's saying, no, I'm not going to wait for this, because this is the energy that's working on still healing from experiences wherein they built an energetic connection with someone and then they felt the bifurcation point. They felt that moment of someone revealing the manifestation goal after the connection was formed that felt like that pulling, that push and pull of two energies that feel a desire to stay together, but they're moving in different manifestations. This is the energy saying, I'm going to prevent that from occurring again. I'm going to heal myself by recognizing if that is occurring, which is why we see that the energy, especially of the feminine, is moving so firmly in terms of recognizing the understanding of what the manifestation is. Because that's that moment of the feminine saying, that recognition point of understanding that when we come into harmony with one another, everything becomes adaptable. But rather recognizing and identifying and making sure that there is alignment prior to that is how to avoid the foregone conclusion of potential energetic pain in recognizing that someone has a manifestation goal that's different than what you want to manifest, in order to prevent that push and pull, but instead just to move together in energetic harmony. This is a lot of energy and separation that is saying better to do that sooner than later, because that's not fixing something, that's preventing the inevitable from occurring if that is the case. And the energy of the feminine is almost reaffirming their own commitment by seeking the manifestation from the masculine by saying, I'm never going through that again. It was too energetically painful. And for masculine, that ability, this is a shared desire for the energy and healing, saying I never want to experience that again. I never want to feel that pull of two energies that hold each other close, but then are moving in different manifestations, because it becomes the entire experience. It becomes too energetically overwhelming. So we see even now that a lot of that is creating that moment of being able to amplify and articulate what that is in order to heal from the past, because even that identification in recognizing something about that from the past is another step of closure in healing something from the past. That's that moment of saying, that is that moment that almost feels like that breakthrough for both masculine and feminine, saying, I never want to go through that again. I never want to put someone through that again. The energy that's in healing is saying, I don't like, sometimes healing is saying no. We see that that's happening for the energy deep in the heart of the divine union frequency, saying I'm going to break that energetic cycle by identifying the parts of myself that I don't want to proceed forward on, or I don't want to inadvertently harm someone with, as well as the energy that is in separation that's saying I'm never going to put myself through that again, even if it requires doing something hard sooner rather than later. Continuing to get clarification, final card for today's spread between our Seven of Pentacles and our Six of Swords in its reversal. One card to clarify, please. Clarification coming through right now with our Page of Cups in its reversal. Masculine and feminine separation, please don't let me be misunderstood. This is the energy that even if you are feeling that sense of uncertainty, this is the energy that is coming into that sense of clarity. This is a lot of the energy right now that is moving deeper into connection by articulating what those manifestation goals are. Because this is simply the energy that is feeling that sense of saying, I don't want to go through that pain again, and discovering that we have different manifestation goals after we've formed an energetic connection. Because when we build energetic connections before recognizing that we have different manifestation goals, that is where a lot of the pain starts. So this is the energy that immediately, even the choice in doing so, that's why for the masculine, taking that step into confidence feels like it is healing something from the past, because you're being confident enough and brave enough to say, I don't want to facilitate that occurring again. That's how the masculine is protecting the feminine, by becoming that sense of recognizing one's own accountability in making sure that that does not occur. While for feminine energy, that sense of seeing a masculine that is willing to take that step and be energetically honest about what they truly aspire and desire, even seeing that. And this is what's beautiful about it. Even the feminine seeing that, and even if it doesn't match the feminine's manifestation goals, that isn't a feminine that is removing the possibility of building a connection with masculine. That is the feminine saying, thank you for your honesty. Thank you for showing me that you have that ability. Thank you for showing me that you will give me that honor of protecting me enough by articulating what it is that you want in an honest way, so that I can amplify the choice as to whether and how I receive it. While for masculine and feminine energy that is moving deeper into the divine union, that is moving into the divine union frequency, this is that feeling of the energies, priorities shifting to such a degree that allows for all possibilities to take form, because that's that moment. What happens when your prioritization point is not just being in the energetic equivalency with another energy that you already know that you share manifestation goals with? Well, that's the moment anything becomes possible. That's that moment that doesn't feel like you've surrendered anything. It feels like all doors are open, right? Because that's that moment that feels less like you've made a choice and more like the choice that you found yourself in the context of a connection with another person. And that doesn't mean that you found yourself like another person becomes you. That's that moment in finding yourself. You found the energetic counterpart that makes you feel like you're becoming more yourself than ever before. While for masculine and feminine energy, that is deep in the heart of the divine union, that is that moment of amplification and being able to look back on your past with a new heightened degree of clarity. And it's like those moments that you say, nothing has changed externally, but I understand a lot more. Everything has changed. Because that's that moment that you can see something in a way that you couldn't see something before. And your perception in seeing something in a way that you couldn't see something before is that moment that feels like it immediately heals something. It reaffirms your own commitment in relationality to how far you've come. Bottom of the deck on this reading today is Nine of Swords in its reversal. It's got to hurt to heal. Sometimes it's got to hurt to heal. And there's a lot of that bittersweet energy here across all of the frequencies. Again, masculine and feminine, this objectivity in terms of seeing something from the deep past with a new clarity, it doesn't make it hurt less. Sometimes it makes it hurt in a different way. Sometimes healing doesn't feel like, oh, good, the pain's gone. It's like, oh, good, it hurts in a whole different way now, right? And that moment of being able to shift something in such a way that you're perceiving it in a different way, it almost requires a different way to heal it. So we see that a lot of the energy right now, deep in the heart of the divine union frequencies, like I look back, I got a different perception on something, which has opened a whole different way of how I have to experience it and how I have to heal it. But it's okay, because it's like the repositioning of something from one place to another, which is almost like that moment of recognizing that you're processing through something that you're ready, like you're working through, like energetically releasing in that way of feeling like you're coming into a better sense of self through doing so. While for masculine and feminine energy, that is coming into divine union, this is that moment wherein we see, that desire or that need to, I told you, a lot of this energy has been building forward in the connectivity point in wanting, in holding on to each other's wounds. And what's hard about that is when we take on the wounds of another, it's like that desire and need to want to heal something that you know is outside of your own sense to heal. That can create that moment of like deep energetic frustration. Because again, I told you, some of these energies are just holding the wounds of others and being like, I can't do anything about this. But it's almost that moment. Like that's also the expression of compassion, because that's that moment. That's like the burden of love that is amplified in the desire to want to make someone feel better or to create healing in someone in places and spaces that are hard for you to reach. While for masculine and feminine energy, in separation, this is like a Band-Aid rip moment. This is something that hurts while you're doing it. This is energy that is having those difficult conversations and recognizing there is some energy right now that is moving deeper into the heart of the divine union frequency with this type of work. There's some energy that is moving away from someone at this time, because that is that moment that effectively is their amplification of saying, if there's something there that isn't working, it's not in your power to effectively change. It's just that moment of understanding. And even for the energy moving forward at this time, this does feel painful, because that ability of feeling that energetic connection that is taking root or taking shape, it's that pain of experiencing something and saying, I've created further closure about something that's in the past, specifically in recognizing that I've taken that step forward. So we see that even now. And for a lot of the energy that's not seeing that expression of someone who's able to move towards them with intention, that feels like a release process, because that is the energy that's almost reminding themselves and saying, I can't change that. I just need to observe that. I need to start to heal from it. That is our daily collective read for today. I'd like to thank you guys so much for being here and experiencing it. Just a reminder, if you would like to book a private reading with me, you can book one on my website, Strega.com. My private readings are done over video, and if you are a subscriber to my TikTok, you can take 10% off any of my services when you pay. Just mention your subscriber name at the point of payment. Please keep in mind, if you book a private reading with me, It is a two-step process. You have to book the reading, you have to pay for the reading. Please make sure you do both if you'd like to have that reading. Most importantly, please remember that I will never, ever, 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 ever reach out to you for a private reading. I will never DM you. I will never PM you. I will never slide into your inbox and tell you that I have a very important message that only I can deliver. The only way you can book a reading with me is if you book one on my website, so I encourage you to do it there. Also, a couple of updates. First and foremost, thank you to everybody who joined us last week for our class on the Magician. Our next class will be on June 16th, Wednesday, June 16th at 6 p.m. PST, 9 p.m. Eastern, and we're going to continue our studies into the tarot with the High Priestess. All you need to do to become a part of that class is become a paid subscriber to my Substack, graystrega.substack.com. Your paid subscription will grant you access to our class, our live class, as well as access to all of the recordings and the course materials for our previous classes, which we're including in the Magician and the Fool. Also, you'll have access to a one-on-one chat with me and the other students to ask any questions in relation to anything that we're learning or anything about your own tarot journey. Also, if you choose to become a founding member to my Substack, not only do you get a discount on the full year's worth of classes, but you also receive a free one-on-one mentorship reading with me, wherein we will assess where you are on your own tarot journey, and I'll give you the best insights on what to utilize and how to direct that, how to use the classes to the best of your advantage, and any insights on how and where you can focus your studies to help improve your own coursework going forward. Also, thank you so much to everyone who entered my contest last month. We have announced the winner. The winner is listed over on my TikTok. If you would like to become a part of this month's contest for a free tarot reading, we're doing something a little bit different this month. Whoever wins, all you need to do to become a part of that contest is take the 2-minute travel survey, which you can find in the link in my bio. Whoever wins that giveaway, I'm going to be asking them who referred them to take the survey. So I'm giving away not 1, but 2 tarot readings this month. So if you've already taken the survey, thank you. But if you would like additional entries, all you need to do is send that over to some friends. Again, we're looking at having some very unique destination-based tarot experiences. I have some ideas on where I'd like to go, but I really would like your insight on where you might like to go. So thank you again for taking that survey, and I wish you the best of luck in winning those free readings. Finally, I'm really excited to announce a few new offerings that I'm offering to my clientele. First and foremost, we are now offering mentorship. Those are on a very limited basis. Those mentorship classes can be purchased on an individual level, or if you'd like to purchase a full month's worth of mentorship, you can purchase them at a discount. Those are 4 45-minute classes each week for a month. Those classes are oriented to whatever your own particular desire or interest is. So I always encourage you to be very mindful about taking those, and also remembering that I only take a very limited amount of people for mentorship because it requires a little work on my part. So thank you to everybody who's already enrolled, and I look forward to working with you if you plan to. Also, for those of my clients who are seeking more consistent tarot assistance, I now offer weekly tarot insights, which is a package of 4 tarot readings, 4 readings, so a 30-minute reading each month that you can purchase on a monthly basis. Those are also at a bit of a discount for any of those who are seeking a bit more consistent support in following where you are on your own spiritual journey. Again, one of the reasons I'm offering these is because of a lot of requests from my own clients and from my community. So thank you guys so much for your advice. I'm always seeking it. And thank you so much to everyone who's already enrolled. I hope you guys have an absolutely beautiful day. Please take care of yourselves. Please take care of each other, and we will do this again